All right. So we're recording. So here's the fun part. We're going to build off the conversation from last week. We're going to continue to answer the questions that came in. You guys had some great questions that y'all emailed through. And then from there, our focus today, last week we talked about how do we prepare? How do we prepare our budget? How do we prepare our mindset? How do we start to look? And kind of what's the story? What's the opportunity? This week, what I really wanted to do was take a second look and go, okay, how do we dive into this? How do we really make it work? And here's what I found is many times what happens and what keeps us from investing in the way that we want to is we're afraid to go out and find a great deal because we may not have the money or the ability in the moment to finance it if needed or fund it. And what I want you all to understand is this little caveat. Always, 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 always open your eyes for a great deal. Because if you don't have the ability to fund it, somebody else does. And when you find that great deal, the money will show up. It always does. It's just a matter of being willing to take that leap, right? It's a matter of being willing to put yourself out there. Now, here's the question, and this is what I want to really cover today is how do we know if it's a great deal? Because the conversation, if you were to come to me or other investors who are active and say, I found a great deal, there are certain conversations, there are certain questions that we're going to ask you. And by how you answer those questions, it's going to give us a level of confidence or comfort in your knowledge or your ability, or it's going to give us doubt, if that makes sense. So what I really want to do today is focus on four things. Number one, help you figure out where your investment decision starts, right? And what does that look like? Number two, help you define a criteria. What is it that you desire as far as an outcome or return for this process? And then how do we, number three, analyze to determine if that property or that opportunity is going to give you that return that you decided. And then last, it's how do we make a non-emotional decision based on the data? Unlike buying a house that you're going to live in, unlike helping a buyer or seller buy a house that they're going to live in, this conversation, this transaction is completely different. It's all based on data. It's based on numbers. It's based on the raw facts. Excuse me. It's based on, is this going to give you the return you desire? And if so, is it worth taking that risk, right? It's just an evaluation of risk and reward. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up that whole conversation just by helping you open the door to how these deals can get put together if you don't have the cash today, because the opportunities do exist. So before I jump in and get started, here's what I want to do. I just want to gauge really quick kind of the investment background of everybody here. So if you want to throw in the chat, if you own rental properties, how many do you own? If you've done flips, how many have you done? If it's zero, just pop in a zero. Just go ahead and throw it in the chat for me and give me an idea of what is our background so we know where we're at. We got one in Keystone, one rental, zeros, a couple of zeros, handful. 4 rentals, sold 2. We can talk about that one right now. 2 houses in Aurora, awesome. 4 rentals, 4 flips, great. A commercial investment. Owned and held and flipped 6 properties. 2 rentals, 0 flips. 3 rentals. So we've got a broad spectrum of experience through this process. So I may call on y'all to help me out through the course. If there's some feedback you'd like to give, feel free to chime in and help us all out. Feel free to pull yourself off of mute if you'd like to do that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to run probably about 45 minutes or so. We'll wrap up about 10 minutes early today because I've got Bold Pivot, and I know many of you do as well. So that gives us a chance to kind of take a quick break and then jump back into Bold Pivot. Here's the plan. Let's talk number one. Investment type. There's only 2 types I'm going to focus on here. There's a various other types of investment that we can do in real estate. To keep it simple for the course of this conversation, we're going to talk about 2. And the 2 types of investments we're going to discuss are investments for cash. And number two, investments for cash flow and equity. Now, here's the difference. Typically, when we're looking at cash, we're looking at short-term returns. We're talking about flips. We're talking about deeds in lieu. We're talking about some other circumstances and resources that are available to us. And we can talk about all those. However, part number two is going to be cash flow and equity. And I had a friend once tell me, he said, the difference between going for cash and going for cash flow and equity is, he said, cash, if you do it well and you do it right, will make you rich, right? You'll get the car, you'll get the house, you'll get the money. He says, cash flow and equity won't just make you rich, it'll make you wealthy. So when he gave me that advice in 2007, that was when I decided I'm going to focus on cash flow and equity, because my focus primarily in real estate and in investing has all been about how do I increase my net worth, not necessarily how do I increase cash, right? Because at the end of the day, I can go get loans on my net worth. I can't necessarily get loans on cash. The other thing I found is that, I don't know about you all, for me, if I have cash, I also tend to spend cash. So just saying, honest truth as we look at it, and it does tend to burn a hole in my wallet. So at the end of the day, I'm going to do my best to do both. I'm going to find properties that are going to create cash flow and have the ability to increase in equity so I can increase my net worth and pay for my lifestyle today. And it creates that win-win. So understand that piece. However, here's the truth. There are some of us, and myself included, when I first started, I said, okay, well, what if I went out and did a handful of flips, generated a bunch of cash, and then I could use that cash as the seed money and a foundation for my cash flow and long-term investment holds. That works too. And yet just understand, number one, determine where you're at. Now, here's the flip side, and this is the myth. If you don't have cash to go buy a flip, how do you put it together, right? Now, side note, if you find a great flip, I can help you find the right investor. If you find a great flip, all you have to do is reach out to your group of database, your group of agents, and they can help you find the right investor. Now, here's what that's going to mean. That investor is going to want to have a conversation with you about what that flip looks like. They're going to have a conversation about what the return looks like. And they're going to want to have you bring an option to them of what you're willing to pay to get access to their money. So it's not that it's a no, it's just we all are looking for the same thing, right? Let's create a win-win out of it and make that work. It's the conversation we had last week. If you were part of the dialogue last week, when my daughter said, hey, Dad, I'm going to UNC next year, going to Greeley, land and home of the cows. And she said, I'm going to Greeley next year for school. What if we bought a house this summer that I could live in? By the way, that was a royal we, if you didn't catch that. That was, what if you bought a house this summer for me to live in, right? And then based on that house, I'll rent out the rooms. It will cover the payment, the mortgage payment. You won't have to pay room and board. And then I'll keep all the extra to pay for my expenses. And that way, all you have to do is pay for books and whatever, tuition. Sounds like a great deal, right? And yet, whose cash is she using? So we looked at stuff. You can buy a house up there close to the campus for about $200,000, $250,000, 20% down. That's $40,000 to $50,000. Okay. In our world, that's what's going to be required. We could do that, or we could also buy it with her as a kiddie condo on an FHA note. I'm a co-signer, 3.5% down. By the way, that's another way to do it. And that's a lot less than 50 grand. And the room rents that she's able to get would still cover the expenses, which saves me about $7,000 to $8,000 a year in room and board. So far, so good. You see where we're going? So I take 8,000 times 4 years, that's 24 grand. It's a lot less than the $7,500 I'm going to have to put down. Sounds like a good deal. Now, here's the fun part. I'm a businessman. So is my daughter. She understands this. And I said, so here's the deal. I'm willing to look at it. Here's the terms. And I tell you this because I just want you to wrap your minds around how this sounds, right? I said, here's the terms. I said, my down payment comes back to me first. And it comes back at a 6% per annum interest rate, paid upon the close. So when we sell that property, I get my 7.5% or 7,500 back, or eight grand back, times 6% a year built over the course of the next 4 years. So I'm gaining 6% a year. By the way, that's not a great investment, FYI, not how I would typically structure it. However, that's what I choose to do with my daughter. And then what we do at that point is we'll split any equity that's remaining outside of that. And the only reason I'm willing to do that is, number one, it's my daughter. And yet number two, she's going to be a teacher. So what I'm looking at is if we can do that, and based on an average appreciation rate of 6 to 8% based on what's going on right now over 4 years, that house is worth 300 grand. She's going to walk away with 25 or 30 grand at the end of the day to be able to use as a down payment on her next place as an FHA loan. I figure she's either going to come to me in 4 years and ask for a loan for that down payment, or I can help her find it through this resource. I'd rather help her find it and help that work out. At the end of the day, it saved me money. It made me a little bit of money. And now I don't have to pay 25 grand tomorrow. So that's kind of the thought process behind this. That's how we as investors think. So if you were to approach an investor and say, hey, I found a great flip, a great opportunity, the investor is going to want to know, number one, what are the terms you're willing to lend at? Number two, what are the terms you're willing to accept? Number three, what's in it on the other end for me as the investor? And how's this partnership really going to work? So just some things to think about as we walk through this process. If it's a hold, the same conversations comes up. So all that being said, when we look at this, yes, my daughter would be on the loan there. By the way, that's the other win, is it gets her credit started, because now she's building a credit score based on that. And by the way, I'm making sure the payment gets paid because I'm not going to let it affect mine. And off we go. So as we move forward, that's what we're looking at. So when we look at cash, is this a situation where you've got to hit a certain dollar amount that then you can take and start to invest? So it's your money you're investing versus somebody else's, because when it's your money, it is cheaper than investing somebody else's. However, what does that look like? No, it doesn't matter if she's making income, because it'll be based on mine, and it's a kiddie condo for her college. So there's all sorts of resources. If you have questions about how that works, talk to your lenders. They'll be able to walk you through that and really put that together for you. Cash. How much cash do you need? That's all going to depend on where you're investing. It's all going to depend on how much you're looking to put out. I've got a call today with an agent in St. Louis. We're actually in the process right now of selling one of our properties. We're going to have about $600,000 in cash. I don't like to sit on it. She's got a great opportunity in St. Louis to do a handful of flips. Right now, they're doubling the return in capital. So I'm looking to take some of my cash, put it into some of those flips, and become a partner in that and help out. Does that make sense? And so it's, how do we take our money to make more money? The risk and the temptation always is if you sell one of those properties, you get the cash, you live on the cash. What I'm going to tell you to do is take that cash, any excess you make from that spend, that investment, set it aside. Set it aside in a whole separate account. Put it somewhere where you're not going to touch it. Allow your regular business to pay your bills. This is your investment money. This is your fun money. And then as that account builds up, it's going to give you the ability to then start using your own money plus some money from the bank to capitalize on that opportunity. Instead of going out and getting investor loans at a higher rate or a higher cost associated with that to make that happen. So all this is there. It's all possible for you. It's just, how are we going to move forward with it? The second place, if you have access, if you have the ability, start off with cash flow. Start off buying property that are going to give you cash flow, that will build equity over time. And then there's all sorts of opportunities that you get to do there, right? There's a BRRR method with a bunch of R's, which is basically you buy it, you rehab it, you rent it, you refinance it now based on the current value because you've done all the work. You cash that, take that cash out, and then you do it again. And it's just a quick BRRR method, which allows you to recycle the same cash over and over and over again and continue to maintain and create that cash flow. And we'll talk more about that at a later time. However, this is just a quick elementary thought. So just understand there's a lot of ways to do this. Many of the properties we bought in 2008, even to today, are properties that do require some rehab. I'm not afraid of it as long as I can get my money back. I'm not afraid of it as long as the equity gains are there. So that, again, becomes the opportunity. Number two, now you start to see what it is you want to do and where you want to start. The question becomes, what's your criteria? What is the criteria you're willing to settle for? What's the risk tolerance you're willing to take? So here's what I'm going to ask. When you think about criteria, how much, if you were to do a flip, are you looking to walk away with? What type of cash? Right? If you're going to take the risk and buy a $400,000 house, what do you expect to walk away with in cash returns after fix up, cost of sale, the whole 9 yards, paying the notes? How much are you going to walk away with? And what's acceptable? And the way I would suggest you take a look at this, and this is Jake's pessimistic side, is I would say, okay, if the market took a dump over the next 3 to 6 months as you were doing this rehab and you lost 10%, could you get out of this property without being harmed? Could you get a small profit and make sure you take care of everything? Or maybe this is your first buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and do it again because you've got such a huge opportunity that's sitting in front of you, right? For those of us who have a ton of equity in our own property, somebody put in the chat, yeah, we can definitely do a HELOC. That's another thing that we're looking at on our property. We've got a boatload of equity. We've been in the house for 13 years. Many of us have. There's opportunities there that you can utilize your own funds at a much less and lower rate to take care of all of this. So when you really look at all of this opportunity, it's there. So number one, if you're looking at cash flow, if you're just looking at straight cash, what's the risk? What's the return? What's the reward? What are you looking for? Here's the truth. Some of the stuff we're looking at in St. Louis right now with this agent is it's kind of like the low-high area of Denver, right? It's in a super historic district, super swank, up and coming, and we'll buy stuff that was built in the late 1800s, 1900s, scrape it all the way to the bones, redo electric, plumbing, everything, all the way through it. It's $120,000 rehab. And yet, because we're willing to go there, if we can get it for the right price, there's a ton of opportunity upside. So sometimes the more you have as far as risk, sometimes that creates the greater reward. Just make sure you know that market and know it well. If you're going to leave the market you operate in, make sure you do so with an agent you trust and that has a track record. That's the other thing I would tell you. The next piece, if you're looking at long-term rentals, if you're looking at cash flow with equity return, here's what I'm going to tell you. And this is something I teach all of our clients that we work with. We do all about $15, $16 million a year in just investor business. We've got some great, huge investors that do a lot of work with us. Here's the reality, and what we tell them is it's not about breaking even and hoping the property is going to appreciate. That's what was going on in 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then when all of a sudden property stopped appreciating in 08, a lot of investors got caught with their pants down and had to sell at a loss. and really took it. So what you want to be cautious of is if you're just going to go do that, and I'll tell you the same thing I tell everybody else. If you're going to take 40 grand and put it as a down payment and break even or lose money every month, hoping that you're going to appreciate so you can make it back over time, why don't we just take the 40 grand, let's go to Vegas or Atlantic City and let's have fun. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, at the craps table, we can go through 40 grand pretty quick, and we got about the same opportunity either in the up or down. So long story short, make sure you know what you're getting into and what the purpose is. And just understand it. So if you're looking at it saying, okay, after all expenses, including property management, I want to make sure I clear $200 a month. Make sure it hits that $200 a month, right? Make sure if you're looking also for equity increases, you're buying in an area that's got equity increases and is going to have that. Now, here's the flip side. If you're looking at it just straight cash flow, there's a lot of great areas where you're not going to see a ton of equity increases, and yet you're going to get great cash flow. Either works. Just know what you're looking at, right? I've got a bunch of friends that are right now investing in Oklahoma City in new construction. They're buying new houses in Oklahoma City for $160,000 to $200,000. They rent for $1,400 to $1,600. They don't have to worry about any maintenance for 5 to 10 years because they're all brand new, and they're fine with that. Now, here's the flip side. Oklahoma City appreciates on average 1.8% a year. So you're not getting Denver appreciation in Oklahoma City. What you are getting is safe access to regular cash flow. So just decide what you're looking for. Someone asks, Pam says, if she's risk averse at her age, what about being the money person, cash flow for income all day long? If you've got cash, there's ways to structure it. And there's all sorts of people that need it. Gary Keller, one of my mentors, has done this 100,000 times. I mean, he does it over and over again. We've done it a little bit as well. Here's the key. Just understand what terms you're willing to accept if you're going to become the money person for the cash you're going to lay out. And then make sure you have a timeline on it. At what point do you determine if that money comes back to you or not? Right? So just clarify all those contracts, make sure it's there to make sure you're covered. So understand your criteria. What is it you're looking for? When my father and I first started investing, because of where properties were, the values, we could buy $50,000 homes that literally 12, 18 months ago were selling for 200 grand. And we could buy those $50,000 houses, put $8,000 to $10,000 into them, rent them for $800-900. Our mortgage payments were $350. And our goal, as crazy as this sounds, the only thing we cared about was, can we rent it for twice our mortgage payment? It was a simple way we looked at it, super easy. So if we had a $400 mortgage payment, can I rent it for $800? And the thought process behind that was, if I can rent it for $800, if the market tanks, the rental market tanks, and I've got to drop my rents down to $600 to be competitive, I'm still making $200. If I've got to cut my rents in half, I'm still making $400 and my mortgage is covered. Today, we're a little more lenient, obviously, with today's prices and where we're at. And what we're looking for is a percentage of return on the cash that we put out. And I'll show you how to determine all of that. So the third piece, now that we've kind of figured out where we want to go, and we've kind of figured out what we want to do and how, let's talk about how do you analyze it. There's a couple tools I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you access to. Actually, you all have access to them. And let me share my screen for a sec. So this tool, get real close, find it, that one. This tool here, you can find if you go to Keller Inc., KELLERINK.com. So if you go to kellerinc.com, you're going to find a bunch of our books and the resources that are there. If you go to the Millionaire Real Estate Investor book and go to resources, you're going to find the spreadsheet. You're going to find a bunch of them. This is one of the spreadsheets you'll find. However, this is a free download. Anybody can download it. You don't have to buy the book. So again, this is a free resource for you. And here's what this does. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at what's the value. So after I repair it, after I fix it up, after I do all the work, if I were to put this property back on the market, what could I sell it for today? So if I buy this $350,000 house or this $300,000 house and I put the 50 grand into it, can I sell it for 4.25? Right? In my neighborhood, what's happening a lot is we've got folks that are coming in and they're buying places that the process were built in 1983. They're buying original owners' homes, and they're buying those homes for $550,000, $600,000. Sounds expensive. However, a house is selling average. My house has got appraised for almost 800 grand, and it's nothing fancy. It's 2,200 square feet with a 2-car garage. So if anybody wants a 2-car garage for 800, I'll trade you. If you got a 3-car, I'm good. My wife won't move though, so you got to deal with her too. Just kidding. Here's the fun part. We've got all these fun things. So they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, if I can get this house for 550 or 600, and what I've got to do is come in and what's the major expense in an older property like that? What's the first thing you're going to fix if it's got all the originals? It starts with a K and ends in kitchen. So you got to drop the kitchen. And what are you going to put in to bring that kitchen up to par in a $600,000-$700,000 house, right? So typically you're looking at 40 to 50 grand just for the kitchen. Then you're looking at carpet or hardwoods, refinish, paint, doors, and all those pieces. So they'll drop 50 to 100 grand into these properties. And yet because they picked it up for 550, now they're into it for 650. So they've got their after repair value of about 850 to 900,000. If they wanted to sell it quick, what would they have to reduce the price to? If they wanted to sell it quick, they could price it around 800. It would go for really fast. And then you've got your fair after repair value. So that's basically your difference. So your 800,000 would be your fair after repair value, meaning if I wanted to sell it fast within 2 weeks and get my money back. Take out your discount for the profit that you choose to make. Well, if I want to make 50 grand on it, that means I've got a net 750 out of the sale. Take out your cost of purchase, cost of repairs. You add all that up. You follow the spreadsheet, right? At the end of the day, what it's going to give you is what your purchase price should be. So now I know based on what I'm looking to make, all my projected expenses, here's the offer I can make. Does that make sense? And then you subtract out any of the financing costs. And that tells you what your initial investment is. So here's where it gets fun. Many of us on this call are agents. Guess what, agents? We get paid a little thing called commission when we help somebody buy a house, right? Including ourselves. So how a lot of these deals get done if you don't have cash is you go to that investor, the money person. Typically, they're going to ask for a couple, 2-3 points up front, plus a pretty reasonable interest rate on the back end. Typically, it's about 1% that you're going to fund it. And you can say, look, my down payment will be my commission. And all you're doing is trading sweat equity for the money. And they're going to make some money on the back end because they're hitting 3 or 4 points up front, plus they're getting 1% a year over the course of, or 1% a month over the course of the next 3 or 4 months as you've got access to it. So they may walk out with 7 or 8% on this purchase over a 4-month investment. However, if you get 8% 3 times a year on that kind of money, that's a 24% return. Is that a good return for a money person? It's a great return for a money person. Well, I'll do that all day long. So that's kind of what they're looking at. You look at the other stuff, right? Is there a finder's fee? You got to look at the inspection. Are there any closing costs? And then you start to look at your cost of repairs. What are the cosmetics, structural, major, fixtures and appliances, landscaping, any contingencies based on you strip away the floors and you realize you got to put in subfloor now too, you name it, right? All the other stuff that you may not account for. And that gives you a total cost of repair. Now you got your carrying costs. And this is how we figure out, okay, so this is what it's going to cost me to fix it. This is what it's going to cost me to get it. This is the profit I want to make out of it. However, if I carry this for 3 or 4 months, I've got to pay the taxes for 3 or 4 months. I've got to pay any insurance for 3 or 4 months. I've got to pay the utilities, any debt servicing, and I've got to maintain that property for 3 or 4 months, water, etc. So what are my expenses just to carry this? And this could be $2,000 or $3,000 a month. And the thing with those carrying costs is that's going to eat into your profit. So make sure you take into consideration all the carrying costs that are associated with this so that you maintain your profit margins that you anticipate. Then you throw in your commissions, any home warranties, title insurance, et cetera, and that gives you your total cost of sales. So this is how you can do a quick analysis if you're unfamiliar with it on what to look for, how to look at it, what are the unexpecteds, what are the pieces you may have missed to ensure that you're purchasing that flip at the right price. And the reason why this is important is what you'll find is many of us that do this a lot will do this upstairs. We'll just do this in our head. And it's for folks that are new to this, my 20-year-old son's been kind of following me through this process. He's like, Dad, how do you do that so fast? Well, it's just time on task over time, right? You start to get used to knowing what you're looking for, how it works. You can plug it together, and before you know it, it's there. It looks almost like Rain Man, yet the reality of it is it's years and years and years of doing these spreadsheets until it's in your head. So start with the spreadsheet and know what you're looking for. Here's the flip side. You get to the bottom of all this, and the number's not what you anticipate. It's okay to pass. It's okay to pass on that. It's just a business. So don't get so emotionally tied into it that you feel like you have to make this move. Pass on it. Release the property out to the rest of the world. Keep going. You'll find another one. And just make that happen. Same thing is true on the hold side. Exact same thing. So this is your flip side. What I would suggest on your flip side is you take a moment and you slow that process down, though, and take into any contingencies. What are some of the things that you may not be aware of? What are some of the things you may be working for? You can find the spreadsheet, Jason, at Keller Inc., KellerInc.com. Great question, Cecilia. I have a partner that finds the wholesale. You'd like to find the wholesale. Where do you find them? So that's another conversation. How do you find deals that are off market? You ready? There's a handful of different ways. Pre-foreclosure, foreclosure sales. By the way, those are going to start coming back. Probate. Those are messy as far as the properties are concerned, and yet those are great, great opportunities. Bankruptcy, estate sale, evictions. That's where a landlord's going, okay, I'm sick of this. By the way, we've got landlords today that are freaking out about the moratorium on evictions and late fees on rent. If we don't approach that properly as a landlord, we can get hurt pretty bad. The reality of it is most of us are doing it well, some aren't. And they're getting hurt. Another place I would look, vacation rental by owner. Short-term rentals right now are getting crushed because they're not getting rented. So if they're not renting and they're unable to make the payment, they've got to either find a way to take care and maximize that equity, or hopefully can suffer through it. So those are a couple different places you can look, just a handful of different places. There's also some investor groups. There's CARI, the Colorado Association of Real Estate Investors, that you can go to and get to be a group with that, get associated and affiliated with that. There's a handful of other investor groups that you can work with that will also open the door to some of these other wholesale opportunities. And a lot of that gets done in a network trading back and forth. So that's the other thing I would say is take a net, spread it wide, and start to network with other individuals who are doing this type of investment, and they'll start to introduce you to others who has that access. So again, it's just spread your wings, start to have the conversations, and then you'll continue to grow that network. It's just like anything else we do. We build a database, we feed the database, we communicate with the database. This is just a different type of database that allows for us to find those great opportunities. So I'm going to change the screen here for a second, because what I'm going to show you is another spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet is our hold spreadsheet. This comes from the hold book. You can find it on that same website, Keller Inc. you can go to the Hold, HOLD book. And this is a spreadsheet that will help us analyze properties to hold. Are we going to hold it for cash flow? So I've already started to fill out in this spreadsheet a property for us. And I'll be honest, this is one I know really well because it's mine. This is one we're actually currently is marketed.
Jake, we can't see it.
Oh, well, how about that? Let me stop this share and I'll start it over again. Thanks for your help. It's a good thing I have smart people on here helping me. So here's the next conversation. Hold right here. So this spreadsheet, can you see it now? All right, so this is one of the properties that we're currently selling, my dad and I. This is that one I was telling you about. We've got multiple offers on it right now, so I'll run through it, just show you what it looks like. However, here's the fun part. This is it's a 4-plex based on the county. It's a 5-plex based on water and based on how it's currently leased. So let's just call it what it is. With that being said, we're going to run this as a 4-plex. We'll dump in all the information into the 4th unit for the 2. So if you were to buy this today for 600 grand, let's say you put 20% down on it, it's fully occupied. So there is no upfront cost for you to walk in and do any maintenance right now. It's fully occupied. 4 of the 5 units have been redone in the last 18 months. It's got a new roof, the whole 9 yards. So this is Jake selling his own property, go figure. However, today with rates where they're at, you can get a 30-year fixed interest rate on an investment property at about 4.5%. So you're financing $480,000 at 4.5%. Down here, you'll see a monthly principal and interest payment. Now this spreadsheet will actually calculate all of this for you, everything in yellow. Just leave and don't touch. However, your annual is $29,000. If we look at rents, the 1 bedroom's $850, another one's $795, another one's $850, and then the other 2 combined are $1,900. FYI, these are low for the area. The leases are all up at the end of May, and if we were to hold on to it, we would increase these rents by about $100 a unit. So that's another $500 a month or $6 grand a year. The gross is $52,740 a year for this property. So far, so good. We take out a vacancy rate because it's not always going to be occupied. And then the other pieces, I haven't put in property management fees here because most of us, if we're small investors, we're going to manage our own properties. However, we do run at about $850 a month for utilities because we do pay gas and electric for 2 of those units, plus water, plus trash, et cetera, et cetera. The $234.42 is taxes. It's $2,800 a year for taxes. Our insurance runs about $850 a year. Now here's the fun part. Why is the insurance only $850 a year? Because we're only paying for the structure. Everything on the inside, all the contents, are covered by renter's insurance. So our insurance is actually fairly low because this is an all brick structure. And then you're looking at trash and lawn care and everything else. Our lawn care runs about $400 or $40 a month for 5 months out of the year. So it's $200. So our expenses all in, including taxes, are $14,000. You add that together with your mortgage payment, you're looking at $36,000 in expenses, subtracts it all out, yada, yada, yada. You're making $6,800 a year, right? Not bad. You're making $500-600 a month. This percentage point though, this is the average rate of return based on your investment. So basically you put $120,000 into it and you're making $6,800 a year. That means you're only getting about a 6% return. Think about it this way. It's if you were to put the money in the stock market, like we all do every now and then, and you go, hey, I made 12% this year. It's not that you have that cash, you just made it. Does that make sense? And then it reinvests the other to 12% because you haven't touched it, off you go. Now, here's the fun part. This is actual numbers based on what we would coach our clients to do if they were to buy this property. At the end of May, that would go to $950. That would go to $895. That would go to $950. And then this one, because it's 2 units, would go up to 2,100. And now we're at a 10% return. If I were to tell you go to a stock market, take a 10% return, who would take a guaranteed 10% return in the stock market? All day long. And that's basically what we're saying is right now you're a 10% return. Here's the reality. Next year, you're going to be able to bump those rents again. So that return will continue to go up. Here's the flip side. Every year, your tenant is also paying down that note by about 2%. So even though you're making 10.5 here, now you're at 12.5% on the note pay down. In our world, we're seeing appreciation at about 4 to 6% on top of that. So now you throw another 4 to 6% of appreciation on top of that, and you're looking at 16 to 18%. So this investment, even though it's going to make you 12 grand a year, $1,000 a month, is also going to pick you up another 12 grand a year or so in appreciation and equity between note pay down and equity increases. Does that make sense? And this is the difference between cash flow and equity and just cash. Now, I'm not a CPA, so counsel with your CPA, because the other benefit to all of this is this really cool thing called depreciation. And what that is a tax term that allows you to basically take the useful life of this property and take it as a tax loss, a revenue loss, even though you hold on to the cash. And the depreciation on this property is taken over 27.5 years. So it would be about $550,000 over 27.5 years, which equals about, in quick junk math, you're looking at about, I don't know, who's got a number? I could do it on my calculator. However, what you're going to look at is a substantial reduction in taxes. I'm going to add that up since I just gave it to you. It's about 20 grand a year in depreciation. So if you show that you made $10,000, $12,000 and you're able to take a $20,000 loss, what you're reporting to the government is actually an $8,000 loss, tax loss. Meaning all $12,000 of what you keep, and it's not taxed. Oh, and for those of us who operate in real estate, because if this is real estate and we're real estate related, you get to actually assess part of that loss towards your real estate businesses. So again, talk to your CPA. I'm not one. I'm the son of one. So I act like I know stuff. However, this is part of the benefit of what we do with buy and hold that you don't get with flips. This is why 90+% of the world's wealth is held in real estate, is because of the tax benefits that we have access to. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Play with this spreadsheet, figure out what you're comfortable with, and have those conversations, because when you determine what your comfort level is and where you're at, you're set. How do you find a good CPA as an investor? Amber, you want to pop my father's information in there? So I would say use somebody who knows what they're doing with real estate and with realtors and what we do. My dad has been obviously my CPA for years. He works with a lot of our agents. He works with a lot of our brokerages as well. He understands what we do, and he also is an investor, an active investor with me. So he can help you through all of those pieces. If you want to reach out to him, he can help you out. Amber will put that information in the contact for you. What percentage would you consider a minimum that one should invest in? Again, it's up to you. My wife and I have this debate often. One of our conversations was that we always put 20% down, and that was just due to her risk tolerance. So that's what we decided to do. If I was single, and those who know me, I would have probably maxed out as much as I could on my home equity line of credit. I would have bought as many properties as I could have. I probably would have refinanced and capitalized a lot of that as fast as I could have and continued to buy property, which in a moment like today could have got me in a lot of trouble or could have done really well. Who knows? And yet what I'll tell you is the way that we've agreed to do it, even though it's slower and steadier, it's put us in a really good position today. Cash flow for wealth is not about getting there tomorrow. You know, it's not like the Facebook videos you see the guy standing in front of the Lamborghini saying, hey, do this and you'll be rich tomorrow because I steal real estate. That's not what this is all about. This is about, how do I budget my world? How do I slowly and steadily pick up property and reinvest those earnings into additional property, and reinvest those earnings into additional property, and reinvest those earnings into additional property, and just snowball it to the point where I'm investing and reinvesting over 50% of my income. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I've never touched it, lived on it, or spent it. It's just part of what I do. And before you know, you get to that point. There's so many ways to do this. For those of you who have 401ks that are held with a company that you used to be with, you can change that into an IRA, a self-directed IRA. Pam had a great question this week. She emailed me on about hers. You can change that into a self-directed IRA, which allows you to go purchase real estate within the IRA and hold real estate within that IRA. There's a myriad of different ways to do this and to consult our clients on how to do it that are safe, that allow you to access and build wealth in ways that you may not have been aware of. So be open to all of those ideas. And then the key is reinvesting. So number 4, now that you've done the research, now that you've kind of figured out where you want to be, make a non-emotional decision about, is this a property I move forward with, or is this a property I pass on? And at every juncture of that conversation, inspection, is this a property I move forward with, or when I pass on based on the numbers? Appraisal, move forward with or pass on based on the numbers. This is all a numeric place. We operate sometimes in high emotion, take the emotion completely out. It may be a beautiful home, it may be in a historic area, it might be something you fall in love with. If you fall in love with it and you buy it, know you're falling in love with it and buying it because you love it, not because it's an investment. From there, there's so many other options. We're talking long-term rentals today. The other options that are showing up, and this is what I would tell you to prepare for, in the next 3 to 6 years, what we're going to see is a huge opportunity in VRBOs. Those folks that were selling their beach houses for $2.5 to $4 million because they were getting $6,000 to $8,000 a week in rent, and they could do that, they're not getting the same $6,000 to $8,000 a week in rent. And those properties will come on the market because they can't afford a $3 million mortgage. And when they come on the market, those are going to be opportunities. So if you've got the cash available, if you've got the resources available, if you've got the partnerships lined up, you're going to be able to step in and take advantage of those opportunities at a low and buy that beach house that you can go spend a couple of weeks at, talk to your accountant on how to do that, and then use as a rental place for the next 50 weeks and make some cash. I think I told you last week about a buddy of mine who they're building cabins in Branson. They've got 16 right now. They're building another 16 in Branson, Missouri. That's what they do. It's all vacation rentals. It's all cabins. What financed it is they have 83 fully paid off single family homes that they rent. And that's what's financing that next venture. So just understand, those are the opportunities as we put it together. And as we make non-emotional decisions, it allows us to see this for what it is. Think about it as buying a stock. When you go look at a stock, as much as I love Disney right now, I don't know if I'd buy Disney right now. They're losing $30 million a day. I want to see how this whole thing pans out first. And then I might pick it up later, right? That's a non-emotional decision. However, I might look and go, man, I want to go to Disney, so I'm just going to buy their stock. And yet that might not work because we're making emotional decisions. So just take the emotions out of it and know that once you have your criteria, once you have a way to analyze that criteria, and once you've decided if this fits, you move forward. For me, everything I can do to reinvest in real estate, I'll do it. And the main reason why is I never have to worry about my real estate going to zero. And I know if I buy it right, I'm safe. Even today, even with the craziness in today's world, with all the other businesses we operate and how we chose not to take paychecks from those businesses to keep our employees employed, we're able to do that because we've got this real estate portfolio that can pay my bills. It wasn't what we've used it for in the past. However, it's a safety net we were able to fall back on. And that to me is the greatest blessing. And if I can give that to you all through this type of medium and through this education all day long. And that's why I end with this, number 5, and write this down. When you find the right deal, you'll find the money. Always, always, always be on the lookout for the right deal. Because when you find that right deal, you'll find the money. All you have to do is start reaching out to your offices, to your agents, to your resources, and before you know it, somebody's going to know somebody who's going to know somebody who's going to be able to help you finance that deal and help you get into it. When you find the right deal, you'll find the money. And now that you know how to have this conversation, it'll change. That's the other thing. If anything today, take what we've learned, go work on it, find some properties, just practice and practice and practice, because what's going to happen is when you call up somebody who is active in this market, they're going to say, okay, so what's your return? What do you expect? What are your repair costs? What's your ARV? And they're going to want to know that you know the answers to those questions. So now that you can speak their language, you're going to have credibility, which is going to give them confidence to help you and give you that money. There's a question, Diana says, what about vacation rental and the for sale by owner one? I think there are opportunities both today to start buying and picking up. Yep.
She's asking for the website.
Oh, that's, so we use vrbo.com or HomeAway are two. There's a handful of others to find them. As far as opportunities, VRBO and HomeAway got really smart because they used to publicly post the owners' phone numbers. So we might have been calling the owners and asking questions. And then they figured out what we were doing, so they hit the numbers. So there's other ways you'll have to find them. However, once you can find the address, you can find the owner. And that's just done through reverse title searches. So in Denver, it's a little more challenging because of the requirements in Denver. Many of them aren't public due to the Denver code and requirements. So questions. What questions do you have really quick as we go to wrap up our time? What are your ahas? What are you taking away from today? Go ahead and pop them in the chat. If they can't fund the renters, why would the next buyer be able to? So here, that's a great question. Why would you buy a VRBO if the renters aren't there? Here's my opinion. It's going to come back. So if you're going to buy our VRBO and you have the ability to wait it out, you'll do just fine if you can get it for the right price. Again, it's a non-emotional decision. And it's all based on the right price. So if you can get it for the right, if I can buy the right house on the right beach for the right price today, I'll do it in a heartbeat. Because I know in the next 2 or 3 years that we're going to start to see that come back full force. And until then, I know I've got a place I can go to. And my goal at this point would just be to break even, not necessarily make money. And the reason why I'd be willing to do that is because of the asset base we have on the other side, by the way. We're in a structure, we're in a situation where we now have that grace to make a mistake and recover. If I'm just starting out, I may not have that grace, so I may not take that risk. Wealth versus rich. Yep, 100%. Know the difference, know where you choose to go. Here's the other thing I would say with wealth versus rich. Track it. Track your net worth every day. Track your balance sheet. Know where you're at. Know what it looks like. Because once you get to a certain point, banks today don't ask me for my finances when I go to do a loan. They ask me for my balance sheet. Because most of what we're doing is on the commercial side and a commercial note. And based on the balance sheet, the strength of that balance sheet, that's what they lend on. They don't care if I make money. As crazy as it sounds. That's how it works.
All right, I'm here to be the party pooper. You have 4 minutes to get on to Bold, and I know you will be in big trouble if you're not there on time.
Hey, thanks, Amber. Thanks all
Yep.
for joining us. Have a great day. Jump on to Bold for those who are going. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be another great day. See y'all.